Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is a special shout out to all you folks in North Carolina. To quote the great Bruce Willis in Die Hard, welcome to the party, pal. Good to have you here. It's time to bet a little basketball, and it's time for four of your favorites to break it down. This was going to be a great show. We were going to talk about all the basketball teams in North Carolina and how well they were doing in their respective tournaments or what their chances were in the big dance. And North Carolina, you've let us down. You've let us down. And we'll talk about some of those results here in a minute. But first, let me introduce my esteemed panel. I'll start with the one in the chapeau. He's got his Buffalo Bills swag. I'm assuming that was all bought half off. You know him, you love him. The pride of Buffalo. It is the one, the only, Chris King. What's up, Chris King?
Good to see you, Scott. Dave, the other Scott Jr., whatever we're going to call him today. It's another day in the neighborhood. Can't complain. You know, it'd be nice if they decided to bring actual sports gambling to South Carolina, but, you know, this is a backwoods state, so it'll be another 30 or 40 years. Good
luck there, my friend. It could be worse. It could be in Missouri, where it comes up for the vote every year, and every year the same senator blocks it because they don't include video lottery terminals.
At least you at least it comes up for votes there.
Yeah. It's not good. Not good at all. Let's talk to the pride of Brooklyn, New York, by way of Long Island. My ex-partner in crime on many endeavors in various forms of media, reunited, and it feels so good. It's Mr. Scott Reichel. What's up, Scotty?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Looking forward to breaking down some conference tournaments. I feel like North Carolina did kind of drop the ball a bit, not just for the actual recent losses in the conference tournaments, but they legalized right after the Duke-Carolina game in the end of the regular season. Really? Like, if you're going to pick a spot to legalize gambling, you probably should have picked before that game, but it is what it is. It's in the past.
You know what? They've got it legalized in time for round 3, my friend, and that's all that counts. So, and of course, finishing up the panel of champions here, it's the pride of, I always get it wrong, Akron, Ohio.
Oh, that's LeBron. Toledo, Ohio.
Toledo. I knew it. I get it narrowed down to 2 and always choose the wrong one. The pride of Toledo, Ohio, now making his home in Houston, Texas, because he got tired of Lake Erie, and I don't blame him. It's Dave Delano. What's up, David?
Hey, what's going on? I think that Duke North Carolina game was a perfect precursor for this, for people watching that game. Like, man, I wish I could bet on this. Not till tomorrow. We may see get Duke North Carolina 3, maybe even 4. Who knows?
Right. Well, and half the population of North Carolina saw the results of that game and was like, whew, I'm glad they didn't legalize sports betting this week. So yes, half the people were bummed out. Half the people were very happy. So, well, let's talk by recapping some of the surprising pratfalls by the North Carolina team, shall we? By the way, I don't know that I even mentioned it. We are all with winnersandwhiners.com. Make sure you stop by if you're looking to get some of the best free information available on every game, every single day. It's an invaluable source because, let's be honest, there's a lot of these teams you're not going to be familiar with. You see them this week. You saw them last week. You're going to see them in the tournament. So Winners and Whiners is an invaluable resource for free previews and predictions every single day.
And don't forget, then after this week and next week and in the tournament, then you won't see these teams again until next February or March, because you'll be like, who the hell are these teams?
That's right. It takes me till about the middle of February to remember everybody's conferences. I can't remember if High Point's in the Big South or the CAA or whatever the hell it is, but eventually I get it all worked out just in time for the season to be over. So, and I'm gonna start with a gambling tip. Now, this is I'd like to get you guys' opinion on this. I talked about it on my video the other day, and I wanted to make it again, make the point here for the good folks in North Carolina. This is a week. Last week and this week are weeks that you're going to fall in love. You're going to see some mid-major team, and they're going to dominate their conference. And that offense is going to be unstoppable. Other teams aren't going to be able to get shots off against them. And then you're going to see them in the big dance, and you're going to be tempted to have them win a couple of games. you're like, you know what? I think this is the year for some of these 13 seeds to break through. And inevitably, you're going to get your heart broken because you have to remember strength of schedule. You have to remember the strength of the conference. And you have to be able to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. Opinions, Chris? What do you think? Am I off track here? Is that good advice? What do you say?
No, I think it's sound advice for the most part. I mean, like you said, you have to look at some of these mid-major teams. I mean, we saw Princeton last year go to the Sweet 16, but that's because they play a style that most major conference teams aren't used to seeing.
I was gonna say that's the one caveat, because every year there is going to be one.
You just have to find the right one.
You got to find the right one, and you're going to be tempted to think it's like 4 or 5 of them. So it's not. So, Reichel,
if you're lucky, you get 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Reichel, you ever fall in love only to get your heart broken?
Yeah, I feel like everyone does. When you're in a lot of bracket pools, it's also a mix of not even just for betting advice, but for bracket advice. You always try to be different because it depends on how many people are in your pool. And sometimes when you try to merge falling in love with a Cinderella story or potential Cinderella story with, wow, there's a lot of people in my pool, I have to be different, you immediately destroy your own bracket on the first day because you just went too crazy instead of just being fundamentally sound and building a relatively safe with a couple of, dart throws along the way. I feel like your advice is solid, but if you want to pull a big picture to bracket stuff, once again, if you like a team, you can pick them to win a game or two, but don't pick a team to automatically make the Final Four because you watch them win the CAA. That's kind of my point.
Right. Yep, exactly. That's a good expansion of my point. Or you could do your bracket like I did mine last year and have Purdue to win it all. So yeah, that was over early. Dave,
are you going to run that back?
Yeah, I was going to say, Reichel brought up a good point there, is the fact that, don't turn your bracket around and throw a bunch of double-digit seeds in there just because you have to be different. Because that's death.
Still about consistency and picking up the most wins in every round. There's a piece of sage advice. Dave, what do you think of my advice? And what is one piece of your advice for March Madness that you would want to share with everybody?
Well, I mean, that's a good point, but it really depends on how much you've been paying attention to college basketball during the regular season, which most people have not. So I see why they fall in love with those double-digit seeds. But a lot of times people also fall in love with, these top seeds as well. Just assuming I haven't heard of this school and they're going to blow this team out. I can just speak for myself. I mean, with so many teams, there's certain teams that I have a good pulse on. If it's a team that I've liked, and I try to figure out what I think the score is going to be or the margin really before I look at the lines. And I, trust my metrics on that. And I don't try to get too caught up in what the guys on, ESPN and different networks are saying. If it's a team that I have a good pulse on, like, for example, if I really like North Carolina Central and I think, hey, they're only going to lose this game by 27 points and they're a 40-point underdog, I don't really care. I know I'm exaggerating, but I really don't care what, they may say with some of that. So you have to trust yourself too. I do think that in college basketball in this first round, a lot of people are going to go off of the names, and sometimes you can still get some value with these teams because I think that the spreads are so big at times because they don't want you to take the big favorites on the money line. They want it to be, at a place where you have to take the points. So sometimes I think, if you're taking some big points, I don't think that it's always a bad spot. Especially when you get in that, I'd say that 6 to 13 seed, 6 to even 14 seed range, 15 and 16s. I mean, those are, they can pull. Those are always crapshoots, really.
And you'll see some 25 to 30 point spreads in those 116 games every year. You'll see some massive spreads. I'll tell you what I like to look for. I like to look for big favorites that are slow. It's a lot harder to cover the spread, cover 25 points when you don't have as many possessions as a normal team does. So,
like, I know me and Scott Reichel both hate Virginia.
Yeah.
when a team plays like that, you're right. You're a big favorite, but if you're unlikely to get to 60 points, maybe not even get to 50 points, I mean, the team's probably going to be able to stay around when you just can't score and you play that slow.
Yeah, watching Virginia play is a lot like watching a soccer game. They're winning possessions. They're playing good defense. They're not scoring any goals, but you can tell who's winning. And that's Virginia plays that way, when they're on. This has been a sketchy year for Virginia. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about this. Now, as we record this, it is Tuesday afternoon. The Davidson game just ended. They played in the first round as the 13th seed against Fordham, although they were a 3.5-point favorite. And true to form, with many of these North Carolina teams, they had a lead, lost it late, and then got hammered in overtime against Fordham. So they're out. App State, a team that had been very, very good to me personally lately, 16-2 in the Sun Belt. They managed to sneak by Georgia Southern in overtime in their first round game as 13.5-point chalk, but then lost to Arkansas State in the second round on a buzzer beater in the semis. So not ideal there. Elon, they were 11th in the CAA. They lost to number 14 Hampton on a layup at the end of the game.
How do you lose to Hampton? I mean, that's just...
I don't know.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
I'm assuming they also lost the Holiday Inn, Ramada, and Hilton. So
I heard they lost a Motel 6.
Not a good season.
No, they lost a Motel by 6. That was the problem.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Because you look at Hampton the next day, they went out and they got waxed by 30 by Delaware.
Yeah, Delaware. They're not playing particularly good basketball either. That was an Elon team that came back from 10 down, only to lose it at the end. High Point, another number 1 seed. They did me right as they got by Radford, covered the 10.5 in game 1, despite being down early by 14, and then came back and choked it against Longwood, lost by 1 in overtime. North Carolina A&T, they were the 12th seed. They lost to 13. William & Mary, 4.5-point dogs. They lost by 17. Who else? Queens. They were 8th in the A-Sun. They won their first game against Florida Gulf Coast, the darlings of that was last year, right?
No, Florida Gulf Coast had that big run.
Who beat Purdue last year?
That was Farley
Dickinson. That was Dickinson.
It's FD, not FG. Sorry. They actually they won their first game, and then they were 5.5-point dogs to Stetson in round 2. The number 2 seed, they lose by 8. They're done. Asheville, a team that I think Chris and I both really liked a lot. They did not cover, but won the first game. They ended up winning by 11 in overtime. Gardner-Webb. And then Chris, in an all-timer, how'd they do against Longwood on, what was that?
That was Sunday.
I think it was Saturday.
Yeah, they got slaughtered. They were slaughtered. I mean, you can't let a team shoot 61% from 2 and hit 7 out of 13 from 3-point range.
Nope.
They got killed on the glass. They were just terrible. Outside of Drew Pember, who didn't shoot the ball well either. He was only 3 of 9, but he didn't get any help. And when you don't get any help, you get blown out.
Yep, they ended up losing that one by 26.
The one plus out of that is going back to John Feinstein's book, The Back Roads of March. Yes, Virginia, there is a Farmville, Griff Aldrich and Longwood going to play in the tournament.
Yep,
I don't think I've ever quoted a book in my entire life. But
I don't think you've ever read a book in your entire life.
I was going to say
that's why I haven't quoted one. That's why I haven't quoted one.
Chris, another great school there in North Carolina. Greensboro, second in the Southern this year. 5.5-point underdogs, 5.5-point favorites to East Tennessee. They lose by 11 in the first round. Wilmington, third in the CAA. 2.5-point chalk to Towson. They lose by 10. And Western Carolina, another team that had played pretty well through stretches of the season, fourth in the Southern. 1.5-point favorites over Furman. They lose by 3 in overtime. So,
and their coach
North Carolina.
Right? He went to Coastal.
What's that?
I said the coach jumped ship, right? He went to Coastal, I think.
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
So that leaves us still to play, other than the big boys, which we will get to in just a minute. It gives us North Carolina Central. They finished second in the MEAC, 17-12 on the season. They're going up against Maryland Eastern Shore. I have not seen a number on that. Anybody seen a number by any chance on that game?
I'll take a look and see if I can find it real quick.
I've got it projected at minus
check.
12. I'll see how my guess is.
Let's see if it's out yet anywhere.
It's for Wednesday, so probably not, but maybe.
Yeah.
No, I don't see anything.
No. Well, but that game is set against Maryland Eastern Shore. They played twice this season. Central won both of them, won and covered both of them. 5-point chalk on the road, won by 8. 9-point, or excuse me, on the road, and 9-point chalk at home. They win by 33. They've covered 5 of their last 6, and the over is hit 8 straight times. Kids, this is a bad Maryland Eastern Shore team. Mainly, they are offensively deficient, checking in 360th in offensive efficiency, according to our good friend Ken Palm, which means only 2 teams are worse than them. Both games, they shot less than 20% from downtown and less than 40% from the floor. They scored 55 and 57. Can anybody give me a reason why this game against Maryland Eastern Shore will go differently, other than the fact the North Carolina jinx seems to be in full effect? Chris, what do you think?
I don't see Maryland Eastern Shore doing a whole lot, like you said, other than that fact that the North Carolina teams seem to be choking on us. But you look at Eastern Shore, and 4 of their wins, they're over teams that aren't from Division I. So they've only beaten 5 Division I teams. And one of those is Morgan State, and one of them is Coppin State. I mean, their best win is over Penn, and that came in overtime back in November.
Right.
They don't, like you said, they don't shoot the ball well. They turn it over a lot. I think North Carolina Central should win this one pretty comfortably. I'd say by 10 or so.
Okay.
I know Ken Palm's got them by 9. But, Lavelle Moton, he's been there before. He's been in the tournament with this program. So I think his team's going to be ready. And like you said, they've already whipped Eastern Shore twice.
Yeah. Reichel, what's your projection for this one?
Yeah, well, I know Steehn definitely loves the belief that it's very difficult to beat a team 3 times in the same season, right?
Dumbest.
We talk about that every
thing
year,
ever.
but I think we might have to bring that back.
Yes, we do have to bring it back because there's a lot of new people, and they're going to hear people say that. It's hard to.
I think it's more relevant in football than it is in.
It doesn't. We did the stats on it last year, and I think the teams that have won the first 2 are somewhere in the 65% win and cover rate, if I'm not mistaken. Help me out with the math. How's my memory, Joe?
I think that sounds right. I don't have it in front of me, but the point is, the argument is, well, they're experienced. They've seen what the other team can do. Yes, and the better team's experienced in what the worst team can do as well. The point is, there's just a talent disparity. I don't think that seeing, for example, NC Central for the 3rd time is going to change the fact that this team shoots below 40% from the floor the entire season.
Well, every time I go to a Globetrotters game, I say to my son, it's hard to beat somebody 1,342 times in a row. So it makes the difference.
Do you take the Generals?
But the point is, I don't even know what the argument would be. The argument would be maybe, they're going to overlook their opponent because they know they can handle it, but it's single elimination. They're trying to make the actual NCAA tournament. I just don't believe that teams are going to be overlooking that badly. You can argue with shooting variance or maybe just the overall teams having an off night. That could happen in general. But I think Eastern Shore probably gets destroyed in this game. I feel like we tend to always see either NC Central or Norfolk representing the conference pretty much every year. Isn't that what happens? I see the same exact final. I don't see anything changing here. Give me Central by a decent margin. I think they cover.
Okay. Now, does it make any difference if I told you that Maryland Eastern Shore has covered 6 of their last 9?
No, not really, because they're still losing those games. They're just, keeping it closer than people think. But they ended up beating Delaware State last game. Congrats, I guess. They pulled off an upset technically in that game. But I just think when you're looking at the last meeting, NC Central won, I believe it was by 33. It's also worth keeping in mind which of these tournaments are being held in neutral sites and which ones are being held in the actual just home arena of the teams in general. This one's going to be taking place in Norfolk, so it's going to be a neutral. But I do think NC Central is just a much better team. So, yeah, give me the better team. I'm going to keep fading the team that's shooting below 40% from the floor against a team that we know is more talented.
For bonus points, can you give me the nicknames of both of those teams?
So, wait, you're about NC
Central?
Or are you talking about
Eagles?
They're the Eagles, and I think Eastern Shore's the Hawks, I think.
Nice job. Right. Nice job. Well done. The Eagles and the Hawks. All right.
That's how you know I've been gambling in college for a long time.
By the way, the only team other than NC Central, Norfolk State lately out of the MEAC that's won the conference title, Howard last year. Before that, you have to go back to 2015 and 16 when it was Hampton, who we just talked about sucking in a different conference.
I'm a Mizzou fan. I still can't talk about Norfolk State.
Yep.
Mr. Delano, how do you see this one?
I don't think really there's a point too much in breaking down the Norfolk, Maryland Eastern Shore without the number. I'm going to look more like at this tournament. I think that North Carolina Central is a good team to take to win this tournament. Right now, this is a quarterfinal game. They're second behind Norfolk State, like Reichel mentioned. It usually comes down to those two teams. Right now on FanDuel, Norfolk State is up plus 175, but North Carolina Central's plus 220 to win the conference tournament. I think that's a good bet. They split the two head-to-head games with Norfolk State this season. And if you are, though, looking to bet on them on this Eastern Shore game and going forward, North Carolina Central, they are first in the MEAC in margin of victory, almost winning by 8 points per game. Maryland Eastern Shore, they're second to last. I'm getting outscored by almost 6 points a game. And this is the highest scoring team in the conference. And also they're 10-4 against the spread in conference games. So I think North Carolina Central in general is going to be a good bet in this tournament against Eastern Shore and to win the whole thing.
Okay, very good, very good. And the only other mid-major that we have alive in North Carolina is Charlotte. Don't call me UNC Charlotte. It's the Charlotte 49ers. They finished third in the American, 13-5 conference record, 19-11 overall. They play on Wednesday. And they do have the double bye, and they do not know who they are playing yet. So anybody got any thoughts on Charlotte you want to share? I know they were good earlier in the season. Can they make a little tournament run here, or did they already peak? Reichel?
I think they probably peaked already. They were leading the conference for a decent portion of the year. South Florida went on a massive run. Yes, I know they ended up losing I think it was their last game of the season. Atlantic, we know, has been underachieving, but we know that they made the deep run last year. So we know that they're capable of making a run. UAB's got talent. Memphis is an absolute head case, but they're still a talented team. The issue with Charlotte is, do I think this team is actually capable offensively of keeping pace with some of these other high-octane offenses in the conference for the actual tournament? I don't think they are. I think Charlotte can maybe upset a team or two here or there. But I mentioned a lot of teams that have a decent amount of talent. I think the American's actually an underrated conference. But you're looking at South Florida, Atlantic, Charlotte, UAB, Memphis, SMU was 11-7 in conference play. Even North Texas was 10-8. We know that they play the really slow Virginia style of play, which is painful to watch, but they've been successful in this conference in the past. It's a tricky conference. Like, I think Charlotte can maybe make a game or two interesting, but I'm not picking them to win the conference. I just think there are more talented teams out there.
Do you think any of the bottom tier chances teams have a shot to get hot? Is there anybody that you see, like from East Carolina on down, anybody get hot to make a run? Or is it going to be
from East Carolina down? No. Wichita is going to draw people's attention by name alone, but that's a long time ago. No, they're not worth anything at this point. Tulane, people like their coach, but they're 5-13 in conference play. No, that's not going to happen. I think if I was going to look for anybody that's not a favorite, I'm not going to pick South Florida. Atlantic's going to be the common choice because of what they did in the tournament last year. I think Memphis has the talent. The issue is I'm not sure if Hardaway Jr. is actually a good enough coach to get them on a run in the tournament. But if I had to pick a longer shot or a team that's not at the top of the conference standings, I would lean to Memphis.
Okay. Well, and that's a Memphis team that is playing pretty good basketball at the right time. They got they won 4 of their last 5, got a nice win over Charlotte, got a win over FAU, got a win over UAB. So, they kind of took care of business there against some pretty good teams. The other game in there was East Carolina, and they win that one by 24. So, yeah, Memphis certainly has the talent to make a run. We'll see what happens with the coach. Mr. King, what do you say?
I think Charlotte can, like Scott said, they can win a game or two. I mean, before we do anything, give Aaron Fern credit. He took over this team at the end of last season after Tony Sanchez got canned, turned his team into a team that won 19 games. When's the last time Charlotte was relevant in college basketball at this time of the year?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The one thing that Charlotte does is Scott talked about North Texas and how they drag their feet up the floor. Charlotte isn't much faster, 356th in tempo. They'll slow it down. They'll make it a rock fight. And that could be tough for Memphis or a team like Florida Atlantic because they want to run. They want to get out there and push the ball in transition. Charlotte can make life difficult. If you're looking at teams at the bottom, I know Scott just bagged on Tulane because of the fact they were 5-13 in conference play, but they're the exact opposite. They will run you into the ground. They've got Jalen Forbes. You got Kevin Cross. There's some good offensive weapons on that team. If they get hot from the outside, they can win a track meet with anybody.
Yeah, that's definitely true. All right, and Mr. Delano, how far you see?
Yeah, I mean,
going?
there's so much that can happen in this conference. I know that you mentioned if anybody from East Carolina down has a shot, but if you look from East Carolina up, I mean, there's 7 teams in this conference.
Mhm.
I don't see Charlotte winning the whole thing. If you do like them to win the whole thing, I mean, they're plus 1,400 on this conference tournament. I think that Charlotte is going to be a team that after they probably lose in the second round of this tournament, though, to not forget about, because they're probably going to be in the CBI, I believe. And I think that they're probably going to be a team that makes a deep run in that tournament that people won't be paying attention to much at that time. Florida Atlantic obviously is the, class of this conference, but there's so much that could happen. North Texas, they always find a way to be there with their style. Memphis they're an intriguing pick with the way that they defend, and they're just so inconsistent. I think that is probably going to be Florida Atlantic in this conference with South Florida and North Texas being dark horses. I just don't think that Charlotte does enough better than those other teams. I think this is a team to keep an eye on for the CBI later on.
Okay. Yeah, it should
briefly
be fun because.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to read off the actual odds. I feel like we probably should have read off the odds of the tournament in general.
Yeah.
Atlantic's the favorite at 160. Memphis is at 440. SMU is at 490. South Florida, who won the regular season, is 550, which I find kind of weird. The 4th best odds for the team that won the regular season. Interesting.
Yep.
North Texas is 950. Yeah, UAB is 13-1. Charlotte is 14-1. So Charlotte finished 3rd in the conference in the regular season, and they're 7th in the odds to win the conference tournament. Probably not a good sign for Charlotte. Just going to throw that out there. Probably not a good sign, but that South Florida plus 550 looks kind of bizarre, doesn't it?
I think it's because they're reacting to the way they flopped against Tulsa in the finale.
Yep, I think that's it. But that's talk about overreaction. They're 14-2 in the conference. I mean, it seems like you could take a shotgun and play the top 3 seeds that aren't FAU, and get yourself a pretty good price there.
And even not just straight up, I think South Florida, they've been disrespected all year, regardless of the match. They're actually the best conference team in the nation against the spread, 13-2-3. So, I mean, that Tulsa game really didn't mean anything. You can't overreact. I know that you mentioned something about
to me.
Well, I know you had mentioned something in one of your videos earlier this week too about motivation. You also have to look at when these teams lost. I mean, you have a team that their spot was clinched at number 1, playing a team at, on senior day on the road.
Right.
I mean, sometimes they really had a throwaway game there. It didn't really matter too much.
Yep, they did, and they just every game they had that late game spurt where they end up getting over the number and covering the spread, and they just didn't have that. They didn't have that spurt against Tulsa. All right, so let's talk a little ACC. Yeah. First of all, let's start with the game that's going to be played. Will be over by the time this video hits the shelves. It's North Carolina State. They're playing today on Tuesday at 4:30 Eastern Time. 9.5 point favorites over Louisville. Real quick, Reichel, did they cover that number?
Well, Louisville, Payne officially left, right? Or unofficially resigned. So probably. You think there's a spark there for Louisville with Payne not being there? I guess they've been a laughing stock all year.
I don't think it'll hurt. I'm not
That's
sure.
fair.
I'm not sure what kind of a boost they'll get, but I don't think they'll do any worse. You take a minus 9.5.
I think that game could actually get interesting, but I think I'm going to lean that way.
Okay.
I'm not going to bet it, but
no, I didn't play it either. Chris, what do you got?
I'd give a slight lean to it, but I wouldn't bet it either.
Okay.
If you look at NC State, they completely crumpled down the stretch. I think they lost 7 out of 9 or something like that after they started off so well. And people are wondering what the hell's wrong with Kevin Keats. Why is his team playing like garbage? They don't play good defense necessarily. They give up a lot of opportunities near the basket. I mean, offensively, you'd think, hey, they got 4 guys that score in double figures. They should be able to beat people with their offense. But you look and, they lost to Syracuse. They lost to Pitt twice. They lost to Wake Forest. Then their last 4 games, you lose to Florida State. You lose to North Carolina. You lose to Duke. You lose to Pitt again. Does this team have any momentum? I mean, you're giving up almost double digits. Granted, Louisville's a terrible team.
Right.
And they have injury issues. They don't have Trainer. They haven't had him for a while. And there's a couple other guys missing, but it's still a lot of points. If you're going to lean that way, I like it better at 8.5.
They definitely don't have Big Mo on their side at this point. No question about it as they went to the finish. Although Louisville lost and failed to cover their last 7. So, yeah, I don't have – if I was going to lean gun to my head, I'd have to lean State to cover, but it'd have to be a pretty big gun.
Yeah, I'd rather eat the money line at -3 or 3 something or whatever it is if I was going to place a bet on that than run the risk of trying to give up almost 10 points.
That's a parlay sweetener to me at best, and playing the money line in there and sweeten up.
Because I mean, if you look at their matchup earlier this season when they played at the everybody's favorite building, the KFC Yum Center, it was an 89-83 game.
Right.
So I mean, they didn't even cover then.
Fair. Delano, what do you got it? Where you got it at?
I personally wouldn't bet this game, but I would lean NC State. They have to make a run in this tournament. They're not really sitting in a position where I think that they're going to be an at-large bid unless they, do something impressive in this tournament. That they definitely have to take care of Louisville. So I would lean NC State. And one thing I will throw out, because there's probably a lot of people, especially if they're still with us at this point, learning about sports betting in North Carolina, a lot of being successful with sports betting is also knowing which games not to bet on as much as which ones. I mean, if you've got 100 games on the board, I think a lot of times that make you successful is not knowing what's going to happen in all 100 games, but just knowing sometime which 1 or 2 or 5 games that you want to play and which ones to just stay away from. So if you don't have a good feel on a game, you don't have to bet it. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, there's plenty of games coming, kids. Everybody just relax for a second. Okay, so we've got Wake Forest is the 5 seed, and they're going to play the winner of the Notre Dame Georgia Tech game, and then they get hit in the quarters before they go on and tangle with the 1 seed there, North Carolina, in the semis. How far does Wake Forest go? Do they get past the Notre Dame Georgia Tech? That dynamic duo, whichever one comes out of that one.
Which right now is Notre Dame. They're up 9 midway through the second half.
Okay.
In a game that's pretty much hit the total already, because the total was only 131.5 and it's 70-61.
There you go. All right, very good. So it's going to likely be Notre Dame. Would you rather have a bye, Chris, and meet a Notre Dame team that played yesterday, or would you rather have that momentum going?
If I'm Wake Forest right now, I'd rather play a team that's already tired, because you look down the stretch, they had lost 5 of 7. Sure, they beat Clemson in their finale on Saturday, but they already lost to both of these teams. recently. They lost to Notre Dame in South Bend on February 27th, 70-65. They lost to Georgia Tech at home last Tuesday, 70-69. It's a team that was going in the wrong direction, which doesn't make sense because you look and they've got some pretty good veterans on that team too. You got Efton Reed that came from LSU. You got Hunter Salas, who obviously has experience playing at Gonzaga before he came over here. You've got Hildreth. You got Andrew Carr, who half the time I call Austin Carr because it seems like he's been there for so damn long. But at this point, you're going to play a team that's already played, that's had a run and gun for 40 minutes or whatever to get to this point. I'd rather take a team that's fatigued because I didn't have any momentum if I'm Wake Forest going into the tournament.
Can Wake get past Pitt?
Not if they shoot the way they've shot lately.
Fair. Reichel, how far does Wake Forest go?
I think they're losing. First game they play, personally. I think they're losing to probably Notre Dame.
Likely Notre Dame?
Okay. Yeah, we see this every year. There's usually one or two teams that were in the field. They're going to make the tournament. They fall off a cliff. They have one last shot to try to win a conference, a tournament game or two to save their skin, and they fall on their faces. And the fact that Notre Dame just beat them a little while ago, I think that you're going to see them implode, personally. So I have pretty much no faith in Wake Forest, especially to win the tournament. I think that they're going to lose to Pitt. I'd say best case scenario, I would take Notre Dame to beat Wake Forest in the next meeting, assuming they hold on with the game they're currently playing. But I think we would all agree Wake Forest is a team that seemed to be a shoo-in for the tournament. Then they fell apart, and I want nothing to do with them based on current form. Nice win against Clemson to finish the season, but still, I don't trust this team. I'm not saying Notre Dame is good, but at least Notre Dame has been playing better than it was earlier this season. Not really saying much. It's a pretty low bar, but still. Wake Forest has been so bad for the last couple of months that whatever they're laying in this upcoming game against Notre Dame is going to be too many, in my opinion. I'm going to lean to Notre Dame.
And, of course, now that we talked about it being Notre Dame, Georgia Tech has scored 6 straight, and it's now a 3-point game with 8:28
I'm saying, well, if whichever team ends up winning that one, I'm going to lean Notre Dame to finish that game off, but either way, I'm not going to want to lay whatever the spread is with Wake Forest in this game. I just can't trust them.
5.5
Agreed.
or 6. And Delano, do you share the scorn for Wake Forest as well?
I don't know if they lose to Notre Dame, but one thing, we're speculating a lot here. I think that Wake Forest is actually going to be the way I think that this ACC tournament is going to play out. I actually think that they're going to be a good over team in this. They were third in the ACC in scoring behind North Carolina and Duke, but North Carolina and Duke, they were better under teams for the most part because their totals were so high. Wake Forest, we didn't really run into the same situation. They were 14-6 to the over in conference games. And if Notre Dame does hold on, it's only a 4-point game now. Notre Dame can get hot at times, but the way that Notre Dame plays for most of the season, I think that they may get underestimated offensively. And I think that this total may be a little bit too low. I mean, I'm jumping ahead here, but I think that that matchup, whether they're playing Notre Dame or Georgia Tech, I'm going to be looking at possibly taking the over in that game. I think that we might have a total under 150, and I think Wake Forest is probably going to be a good over team. So I'll probably be looking at them more so for totals.
I'm probably more tempted about the team total. I worry about teams with tired legs playing the second day in a row, coming up short. They can't elevate as quite as much on their jump shots. Worry about that.
They're 20 years old, 2 days in a row. They should be fine, and it might hurt them defensively.
Well, yeah, they got to play. If they make it through 2 games, they're 40% done with the tournament if they want to win it. So that's one of those gauntlet tournaments where you got to win. You got to win 5 in 5 days to take home the title. So yeah, it gets brutal in the ACC. All right, I guess that's it. We'll just wrap. Oh, I guess we do have a couple more to talk about.
We probably got the only 2 that most people care about.
Right. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the 2/3 of the triangle there. It's Duke and it's North Carolina. Man, where we heard that story before. Chris, let's keep it simple. Who goes further in the ACC tournament, and who goes further in the Big Dance?
I mean, the fun part is that, I have cousins that live down on Tobacco Road, and one's a Duke fan and one's a Carolina fan. So one will be inevitably be pissed off with what I have to say, but that's all right. Duke, every time we see them, they reload with new talent every year. It gets old. It was old under Krzyzewski. Shire's done a decent job. They didn't have the kind of success they wanted to have when it came to playing Carolina this year. They lost 93-84 in Chapel Hill. Then they lost.
That's putting it a little delicately. They trailed for like 90% of the two games combined. That's a pretty.
I'm trying to be nice about it.
Yeah.
Then they lost 84-79 Saturday in a game where we thought we were going to have the return of, when Christian Laettner stepped on people with the whole trip by Filipowski on Ingram. Duke will make a little bit of a run, but I think Carolina is going to end up going further. I like them to win this tournament. They've got the inside game with Baycott, and you've got R.J. Davis on the outside. Ingram.
Is there a better guard in the country than R.J. Davis?
I wouldn't pick anybody over him. If we're talking about just leadership and experience, I think Davis has to be on a short list.
Yeah, I agree with Reichel.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I asked the question. Nobody immediately jumps to mind as far as the complete package goes.
And then you've got
because most of the great guards go to the G League, or they just skip college in general. So, yeah,
true.
And don't forget, you've got Cormac Ryan, who came over, and as a transfer, and he's played well for them too.
Yep.
What is he? 55? 55 years old? 54? I think he's like 25.
He's like 72.
Right. Prediction time, Chris. How far does Duke go in the big dance? What round? What round do they get knocked out in?
I don't see them getting past the Sweet 16. I just think that they're going to run out of steam because we talk about it every year. Yeah, sure, you got 75 McDonald's All-Americans on your team, but that doesn't matter when you get to this point because A, they can't all play, and B, they don't know what it's like to play in that kind of spotlight. You run into a veteran team like a Houston or a Purdue or somebody like that can make your life a living hell for 40 minutes, be it with a guy like Edey that can just knock you senseless in the paint, or like Houston where they'll just suffocate you for 40 minutes. And you don't know how to respond to that because you're so used to being able to do whatever the hell you want. And that doesn't work once you get to March Madness. I think Carolina could be a Final Four team. I don't see them winning the title. I think there's too many other teams that can match them offensively, but also know how to play defense, where they won't get into these 85 to 80 kind of games. But I see them making a deeper run than Duke.
All right, very good. Mr. Reichel, your predictions, please.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I do root for North Carolina, but I'm realistic about it. They're the best team in the conference. I don't think it's particularly close. Remember when the ACC was good? You got Virginia, this current version of Virginia, one of the last four in teams, as the 3 seed. This conference has fallen off a cliff. So you're looking at basically 2 teams as of right now that are picked to win the tournament potentially. And North Carolina's led for, 78 of the 80 minutes they've played against each other? Like, it's been an absolute destruction when these teams have faced off against each other. I got to take North Carolina. They've just been the better team than Duke, and I think that they're better than the others. The sleeper I would consider for this conference would be Pittsburgh. I just like what Capel's done with this team, and I do think that Pittsburgh is a solidly run team. So I think 10-1 on Pittsburgh maybe is worth consideration. North Carolina, though, at like 175 to win the conference, I do like. I don't know why they're the same odds as Duke. I think North Carolina, based on the head-to-head dominance, should be cheaper than Duke. So I do like the actual price for North Carolina. To answer your question about the deeper NCAA tournament run, I think North Carolina would make a deeper run. I think Duke loses in the round of 32. I think we saw it last year against Tennessee and with Filipowski with his court storming thing and the tripping. This team just seems very soft. Duke used to always be a lot more physical and mentally tough, and they were going to just outwill you. They don't seem to do that anymore. I don't know if that's a Coach K thing, and now that he left and Shire doesn't really promote the same thing. Doesn't it feel like Duke for the last couple of years is just a little bit softer, and they seem to get punked all the time by physical teams?
Yeah, they don't seem to have that edge. They don't seem to have that edge that they did, like with Christian Laettner, and even later than that. Yeah, very good. Is North Carolina a Final Four team?
I think they are. I'm not a Baycott guy, though. I can't stand Baycott. I can't wait for him to finally leave after 7 years. But he can get rebounds. He has no offensive talent. But you're looking at North Carolina. They missed the tournament last year. We saw their dream run that they made the title game. Probably should have won. They would have been double digits at the half. But I think they are a Final Four team, but it's really bracket dependent because there are some flaws. They rely a little bit too much on Davis for some of the scoring. And if he has an off night, they might just lose to anybody. I don't really trust the scoring depth, in my opinion. But I think yes, but I want to see the draw first.
I'm also not convinced they've solved all their defensive issues.
Who, Duke or North Carolina?
I think you stumped him. His camera broke.
Mm-hmm.
I think he meant Carolina, but I think he was referring to Carolina. I know Steehn.
Liabilities don't come
Oh,
back.
welcome back.
Rear their ugly head. Mr. Delano, what say you?
Well, before we lost you, you said you're not sure that Duke has it, or was it North Carolina that you said you weren't sure solved their defensive issues?
Yes.
I think he's having technical difficulties. So
All right,
I'm assuming
cool.
North Carolina.
Yeah,
Well,
let's just say Carolina has defense.
Well, I like this Carolina team as well. I guess the reason I asked is I was actually going to bring up I do like Baycott not at this level, and especially with the experience. And I do like how they defend. A thing with North Carolina that I like. I did take them in that last game against Duke, and when you look at the pace that they can play at, I think that they're going to have a better chance adjusting in the tournament than Duke is. I mean, Duke plays at a lot slower of a pace. North Carolina, a team that can get up tempo, but also defend at a high level while playing fast. There's not as many teams that really do that without really slowing the game down. I mean, Arizona is able to do it a little bit, and Tennessee plays a little faster. But I like North Carolina. I think that they should go further in this tournament. As far as saying how far teams go, like Reichel said, I really have to see the bracket because a lot of it depends on the matchups. But, just blindly saying it, I think that North Carolina probably is at least an Elite Eight team. And I would be surprised if Duke goes past the Sweet 16. But, of course, they may get a favorable bracket. But just going off of what we know now, I definitely think North Carolina goes further.
Where do you see
I can
Duke?
just really see Duke losing early for me. I could see them getting upset
Where do you
early.
see Duke going in this tournament? Do we see them in the title game? Do we see them get knocked out before that? Can they get past a team like Pittsburgh? I mean, we saw them beat Pittsburgh once and then lose the second time. What do you make of that, David?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a third matchup between. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a third North Carolina and Duke matchup. Although I think a team like Pittsburgh obviously is going to have more motivation because we're looking at Duke and North Carolina are probably both going to be at least top 2 seeds. Worst case scenario, a 3 seed. So I could see Duke getting beat more so than North Carolina. I think that North Carolina, with their senior leadership, I just think, like you said, they're tougher. And I think that this conference tournament, at least from what I've seen, I think that this is probably going to mean a little bit more to North Carolina. So if one does get knocked out, I think that it would be Duke. But we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, let's welcome back the muted roller.
Georgia Tech, by the way, is now leading Notre Dame by 1.
I just stopped hearing you guys. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Steehn, your
all
mic is
we
still
had to
cutting
do
out.
was talk about how Notre Dame was a lock. And is it really?
Yeah, you're kind of
Georgia Tech's
choppy.
up by 1 now.
Should be good.
Okay. Either way, yeah, we have anything else you want to add for the tournament, or I think we're just set? Are we set?
Hard to say because Steve's the one that came up with this. So
Fair. Okay.
I only had to set it. I had to set it up because he couldn't get the hosting or the thing to host. That's why I had
Fair
to send you the
enough.
link.
Well, if this part doesn't get cut out,
No,
We'll
we're
fix
good.
it in post.
Is my audio any better?
No, you're
Now it
good.
is.
Now you're good.
Okay. Yeah, that's really it. Did you guys? I know I missed a couple of minutes. Did you guys talk about dark horses in the tournament? I know you guys were talking about Pitt Anybody else got a dark horse they like?
I said Pitt. That was all I had.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all you can have. I mean, you look, Miami was terrible down the stretch. They'll probably lose today.
right.
Florida State, sure, they won their last 3 games, or they won their last game, but they might not get past Virginia Tech. And nobody likes Syracuse.
Yeah, Syracuse is.
I don't know if nobody likes them. I mean, 50-1. I thought about. I mean, I feel like the main sleepers would be Pitt or Clemson, and Clemson is a kind of a similar story of they started the season off well, fell off a cliff, and now they're trying to like piece it together. But Pitt's been that consistent team for me. I'm not taking Virginia. They can't score. I'm not taking Wake Forest because they can't really stop anybody. Syracuse is entertaining, but I don't think they're good enough. And yeah, it's a really bad conference. Once again, the ACC used to get a bunch of teams in every year. If Virginia loses early, are they getting 2 teams? Are they getting 3 teams? Like, this is going to be one of the lowest number of teams in the field for the ACC in a long, long time.
Yeah, that is a great question. Does Pitt? Do you put Pitt in at 21-10 if they win?
Yeah, Pitt's getting in. So yeah,
one tournament. So there's 3.
I think Wake Forest.
I think Clemson will get in because of their net rankings and things like that.
Right.
Because you look, they're a team that they beat South Carolina, they beat Pitt early on, they beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa. You beat teams like UAB, you beat Boise State comfortably at home. You won in Chapel Hill, you won in Syracuse, and actually they swept Pitt, which I didn't realize until I just looked at their schedule. I mean, granted, they lost to Notre Dame, they lost to NC State down the stretch, and then they lost to Wake on Saturday. But it's still a team that's 21-10, and with those kind of wins, they're 24 in the Ken Pom rankings. I think their net ranking is pretty similar. I think they'll get in regardless. I mean, granted, you don't want to flop here, but
I like Clemson's journey. They played the Boston College Miami winner. I like that game, and they played Virginia. That's the clashing styles. I think they get past Virginia, and then you get the Duke Syracuse line, likely Duke there. I think they've got a decent shot to get to the finals. I like the Clemson team as a dark horse. So, any final thoughts?
By the way,
the question is, can Brad Brunell keep his team ready?
Right. Go ahead, Scott.
Maybe. I was going to say, I'm looking at Lenardi's bracketology right now. He has Pittsburgh on the next 4 out line. He has Wake Forest in the first 4 out, and he has Virginia in the last 4 in. He has Clemson as a 6. So right now, there are 3 teams in the ACC that are actually firmly in the field. Virginia's a maybe, Wake Forest is a maybe, and Pitt's a maybe. So the ACC might get 3, probably 4 teams into the dance, which is still low compared to what they normally would get.
Absolutely, yeah. You're going to have some teams make some hay in the tournament to maybe make the show there. So, all right, guys. As always, thanks very much for joining us once again. Special welcome to the folks there in North Carolina. Man, you guys got some good basketball teams. A lot of mid majors that we had a lot of fun watching this year. And at least I don't want to speak for everybody, but at least for myself, made me a fair amount of money. So I'm happy about that. I'm sorry they didn't do better in their respective conference tournaments, but yeah, we still got the big boys to watch. So we'll see how that goes. Chris, what do you got going on? Tell everybody what's happening.
Right now on Winners and Whiners, I'm actually covering the ACC tournament, so I'll have all those games all the way through Saturday. Also the Pac-12 tournament, and then of course we got baseball starting up in a couple weeks. The NBA and hockey playoffs coming up, and on the expert site you can always get my premium plays every day, and with just parlays, there's always those as well. In case one bet's not enough, hey, why not go for 4 at the same time? And kick yourself in the face.
And don't forget, we will have a very, very extensive March Madness guide coming out.
Working on that too.
Shortly after the tournament brackets are announced, all feverishly working behind the scenes to do capsules and for previews for teams that may not make it. So that's always fun. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, make sure you check that out at the Winners and Whiners site. Scott, what do you got happening?
Just a bunch of free picks and podcasts, same as usual. 6, so I'm trying to hang in there, but mostly doing hockey. Just based on how I've been seeing the cards. That's been going well. I do enjoy how I kind of ignored college basketball for picks for about a month and then just picked Mercer to beat the Citadel in the conference tournament. That won, and then I just didn't talk about college basketball again. So, yeah, that ended up working out well, I guess. But still doing the free picks, still doing everything on Twitter at Reichel Radio. You know where to find me.
All right, very good. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Delano.
One thing, if anybody's made it to this point of the video, and if you're in North Carolina, I definitely want to bring it to your attention. You know, if you're looking at how do you sign up for these sports books, check out winnersandwhiners.com. We have a sports book section. You can check out the promos, DraftKings, BetMGM, FanDuel. A lot of them giving you some good offers where if you just bet $5, they'll give you, $150, $250 to play with depending on the book. So that's a good way to get started without really risking your own money. So check that out, and the links on the Winners and Whiners website. And also, as I mentioned, if it's hard to, you can get caught up with ESPN and all this stuff and which teams to fall in love with. I'm right now a 27-10 running college basketball. I've actually been following these teams. I kind of know which teams, I have a good pulse on which ones to stay away from. So check out our expert section as we get into this, and we can help tell you, which lower seeds you might want to fall in love with and which ones to stay away from, and vice versa with the higher seeds.
Absolutely. And I'm coming off a hot streak as well, currently 16-5 my last college basketball plays, and that's really all I concentrate on. I have a number of other jobs, and I don't do I haven't done the NBA yet for the most part. I don't do NHL. So I'm all college basketball right now. So if you're looking to get the best college basketball plays, I am available. Make sure you check out the experts tab at Winners and Whiners. Follow me on X at Steehn. You can follow Mr. Delano at Get Sports Strong. Chris King is Betting Royalty, and Scott Reichel is Reichel Radio, as previously mentioned. All right. Hey, thanks for hanging with us, guys. We appreciate it. As always, don't forget to drop us a comment, like, and subscribe. Please like this video and subscribe to the Winners and Whiners YouTube channel if you're looking for more great daily content. We got it for you right there each and every day. You guys take care. Good luck. Bet with your heads, not with your hearts. Take it easy. Take it easy. There's always games tomorrow. Don't shoot your wad on the first day, North Carolina. Everybody just relax, all right? Have fun. Win some money. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.